Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. Last summer, Andrea Picciotti-Bayer spotted her 11-year-old daughter sitting in the grass entertaining toddlers who belonged to a young couple that they barely knew. She noticed that her children couldn't resist the small and the adorable. That afternoon produced a treasured friendship and a model for something in Catholic living. And she joins us to share about this. Andrea, thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great, Marcus. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Oh, Andrea is legal analyst for EWTN News and director of the Conscience Project. Please follow her work, conscience-project.org. Andrea, this is a very heartwarming piece, and you call it the Theology of Presence. I guess in general, I'd like to invite you to open with that, but also how much the gift of presence has suffered in the digital world.
You know, Marcus, I think it's not just the digital world. It's the world in which family that once lived in the same environment is now scattered all over in different parts of the country, oftentimes different parts of the world. And so what used to kind of bind us together with different generations, now we find, you know, especially in the U.S., this nuclear family, mother, father, children, and without the natural networks that we once had. And I see that in my own family. My older children are grown and flown, as they say, and living in places that are just a little too far to get to on a daily basis, unless it's a really long drive. And it calls to us to, as Catholics especially, to be attentive to the people that are within our midst. The piece that I wrote that you referenced is about this friendship that struck up almost a year ago to the day. And it was a young family whose cute little children caught the eye of my 11-year-old and has then, you know, gotten the hearts of all of us. Matt and Trish Simpson are new to my parish. They've been there about a year or so. And I've got 4 kids under the age of 5, which is happening more and more frequently again among young Catholics. But their family doesn't live nearby. Their relatives aren't close by for a quick babysitting to allow them to take a break. And instead, I think God is calling our family to step into that. And at the same time, we're getting the benefit of younger ones. As my youngest are now 11 and 10 years old, it's great to see them almost serving as aunts and uncles to these younger kids.
The joy of the fact that this is still possible, that stories like these are still happening and they need to be highlighted, is heartwarming. It really does show us that this takes effort, but friendships are worth building because they're an integral part of our Christian identity.
Absolutely. And, you know, not that I am, an absolute perfect sage, but after, this isn't my first rodeo. And after, you know, parenting and going through different generations and the phases of, you know, school selection, homeschooling, hybrid, preparing kids for college, sending them off to college, all of these kind of gifts that we've experienced in our lives are ones that we want to pass on to young parents especially, because I think that there's a unique discernment that Catholic families have in making these worldly decisions, and being able to pass on advice with a supernatural outlook and advice even professionally about how do you navigate and manage having one spouse stay at home full time and one working outside of the home, and making sure that the one who is working outside of the home doesn't miss out on the exciting parts of parenting, is also comes with experience, and doesn't mean that I'm not going to give terrible advice every so often. And I constantly tell my friends, you know, you guys have the grace of marriage and the grace given to parents. So I'm only giving you suggestions, but in the end, this is a decision that the two of you are going to be making. But it's a lovely thing to be able to pass on. We want to pass it on, obviously, to our own children, but to be able to spread that net wider and share it with young families in our parish and in our community is, I think, a gift that we have as Catholics to be able to pass on.
The unfortunate thing is, if we don't learn to cultivate this sense of friendship, and frankly, dare I say, intergenerational friendships, then we lose sight of the fact that exactly what you're doing, your heart-won wisdom, is meant to be given forward. We lose that. We simply lose that continuous flow of the river of wisdom that comes ultimately from the mind of the church in Christ.
Absolutely, Marcus. And I think that there's an easy thing that fills that void if you're not going outside of yourself, and that can be bitterness and resentment, isolation, loneliness. The more connections that we have with other people, even people that are younger than us or older than us and work in different spaces than we are, it's really important. And it's been for me and for my kids a wonderful kind of addition to our lives, right? To be able to see a new baby that's welcomed into a home, to help a young mother and lend a hand so she's not overwhelmed, to be able to give advice to mom and dad along the way. The interesting thing that is worth highlighting is you also have a chance to marvel and delight at the uniqueness of the friends that you make. And in the case of the Simpson family, Dad, Matt, is legally blind and pretty exceptionally competent in his life as a man with extreme visual impairments, where nothing limits him, nothing gets in his way. He does things, and it's a great reminder of fortitude and tenacity, and not seeing people who have physical limitations as being limited in their lives, but instead a great example of the contributions that they make in their daily lives, in the communities that they live in. And he's also making a great contribution, Marcus, to our country as a I think it's a 4-time Paralympian in a unique sport called goalball, which some of my teenage daughters are learning to be line judges in the sport to support Mr. Simpson and this great program that's there for the blind in our community.
This is astounding to hear about the fruits of such a friendship that you've cultivated. And you also highlight the insight from the Institute for Family Studies that what young families want most is the sense that they're not navigating their marriage and family life entirely alone. And as soon as I read that, and I've known about these different studies, I realized one of the first things my bride and I sought out were wiser couples than ourselves. And so I dare say some of my closest friends are well over 20 years older than me, and they've been running this race far longer than me, and thank God for that.
No, it really is wonderful, and that's something that, the IFS has also said churches and religious communities are some of the more generous environments in which young families find support and connection. Not only young families within their own age group, but also that older generation that can hold the baby. If mom needs to take the toddler out or take them to the bathroom in the middle of the Mass, to have that confidence and that connection, especially if you don't have your family nearby. I also think, it's wonderful in the case of the Simpson family, they're recent converts to the faith, and we're seeing more and more young people come into the church, and their catechism and the preparation for confirmation is wonderful. But as we all know, as people of faith, our learning of our faith is a continuous experience. And to be able to have a friendship in which you can explain what this feast day means, its significance, and to be there with the families as they have oftentimes their first celebration of it is really wonderful and lovely.
It's not, to echo Pope Leo here, it's not just about having good relationships or genuine ones. It's about having stable connections as well, a continued resource of reliable friendships that help us live this virtuous life together.
Yes, and I think Pope Leo's spoken often about the challenges of technology. It can bring us closer together as well, whether it's coordinating when you need help. But these are our challenges, and summer is a perfect time for all of your listeners to make new friends of a family around you.
Andrea, as usual, thank you so much for your wisdom and your time.
Thanks, Marcus. Have a lovely afternoon.
You too. My guest has been Andrea Picciotti-Bayer. She's legal analyst for EWTN News and director of the Conscience Project, and she's been talking with us about a theology of friendship and presence. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.